Namaste. Have you ever felt frustrated when things in your business didn't quite go as you had planned? Well, stick around because today's episode is all about the value of trusting the journey, no matter how bumpy it may seem. Now, if this is your first time joining us, I am Gloria Grace, the Light Messenger and Holistic Business Guide. And as I said, I know, actually, I really do know how frustrating it can be to plan an event, let's say, and then it fails to materialize the way that you had planned. In fact, when failure is out of your control, it can almost feel like the universe is conspiring against you. I felt that way a few years ago. I was in the midst of planning to have a website. No, I was launching a workshop, and I was going to be hosting it at a hotel in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And it was going to be in October, and I had to postpone it twice. Number one, first time was for a hurricane because the hotel was in the path of the hurricane, and they had to shut down and take preparations. So I postponed it for a couple of weeks after everything would be clear. But then, as so often happens, life again interrupted, and this time it was because my sister was in the hospital, and this was actually a few years ago. This was when she was, unfortunately, going through cancer, and I was gonna lose her a few months later. So at that time, when I had to fly out and we weren't gonna be able to do the workshop in October, I had to put it off till January, and I did not know at the time that, in fact, when we had the workshop, it wound up being just a few weeks after she had passed. So I really had to put my faith in God that everything was going to work out. And it was not an easy thing to do. And I'll share with you a little bit about why, in particular for me, it wasn't easy to be able to trust that everything was going to work out. And one of the reasons why some female entrepreneurs like myself have this trouble is because we have grown up in an atmosphere where it was hard to trust. So, whether, if you grew up in an abusive family, for instance, or in my case, well, it wasn't physical abuse so much as it was more emotional abuse because my dad was an alcoholic. My mom also um, was dealing with that, and so had a temper, but again, it was mostly yelling and things like that. But as a result, then because I grew up in that atmosphere of fear, it was hard for me to trust people. It was hard for me to trust myself, frankly. And and that really became apparent when I was older, when I started my business, really. That's where it really brought up all of these things. And I had fear of failure, of course, as many business owners do, even regardless of whether or not you have grown up in an abusive household. It's normal, frankly, I think, for some people to still have that fear of failure. There was the issue of trust came about where I would be I unwilling to delegate responsibilities a lot of times, or sometimes you just procrastinate instead of taking action on things that you know you should do. And I still engage in some of these practices from time to time. I'm not perfect. I am a work in progress, as many of us are. And as long as we keep moving forward, that's the important thing. And trusting the journey, which we're going to talk about more about. But it's also, a lot of the things that kind of keep us stuck is also this sometimes unwillingness to forgive ourselves, not only other people, or sometimes not unwilling to forgive, higher power, God. And it can just keep you stuck and stressed. So the title of this episode is called Trust the Journey. Let go and let God's plan unfold. And as an entrepreneur, it I think even more, and again, that's why this when I became an entrepreneur, these trust issues really came up for me because if you have been in business for any length of time, I'm sure that you know that the journey is not a straight one. There are, a lot of hills and valleys that we go through. You try some things out, some things work, some things don't work. And there's a lot of failure that comes along with being an entrepreneur. And that makes it hard to trust that everything is going to eventually work out for you. Because when you're in the midst of something going wrong, let's say you're launching a new product and it's not as popular as you thought it was going to be and it didn't make as much money, that can be really frustrating and it can make you start to doubt yourself and to start wondering, should I really be in business? Maybe I should just give it up and get a job. And I tell you, I've even had those thoughts again recently because things have not been going as smoothly as I would like them to be, even though I like to put up a good front, but things don't always happen the way we want them to do. And so I have had to really let go and let God and trust that things are going to turn out okay. And I know that can be challenging. Like I said, even though I have done a lot of work on myself over the last few years, and we're going to talk about that in a little more detail about how to be able to trust and let go and let God. It's not easy and it's necessary at the same time. It really is. Because when you try to go and do it alone, when you don't have higher power to lean on, it can be that much easier to give up, I think. I really do. Because while it's definitely important to build a team of real human beings and to be able to help you grow your business, I think because there are those inevitable setbacks that will happen. I mean, you look at any of the most successful business owners, and here's one just to even that just comes to the top of my mind right now is Steve Jobs, who when he founded Apple Computers, and then I think at one point I believe he was actually ousted as CEO of the company, and then he wound up being able to go back to it and really helped it grow to even bigger heights. So he is someone who I know believed in a higher power. So unfortunately, he's no longer with us physically, but he really devoted himself to his spirituality, to a meditation practice, and I know that helped him a great deal. And there's lots of other examples of people who do rely on a higher power to be able to see them through, to be able to help them in growing their business. So, years ago, I wrote a blog article. You can find it on my website at gloriarand.com, where I talked about God as your silent partner in business. And I really do feel that turning it over to God, turning your business over to God. A lot of people talk about turning your life over to God. Well, I'm going to say turn your business over to God and trust that as long as you also do the work that you need to do to grow your business, but also trusting that if what you're doing, if you're coming at it, if you are creating a business and you're doing it for all of the right reasons, it's not just to make a buck. Yes, being profitable is important, but it's also because you really believe in whatever it is that you are doing in your business, whether it's a service that you're offering or a product that you're selling, that it is going to benefit someone, then ask God for guidance, ask God for wisdom, ask God for support, and trust that you are going to receive that guidance and support. And it may not always come in the way that you are thinking it will. And it may not always come in the way that you expect, and it may not come on your timetable either. That's something else you have to learn. And that's where that trust comes in. And again, I know it can be challenging, but when you can start doing some practices, like I'm going to recommend things like prayer, you know, meditation, ways that you have to be able to connect yourself. I'm I paused for a moment there because we were having a little internet issues there, but I think we're okay now. So being able to do things like that, what ways that you have to align yourself with your higher power, then that is going to help you through those times in your business when things are not working as you'd planned. And I wrote in my book here, Live, Love, Engage, How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. I actually have part of this here because I wanted to share with you a part of what I was writing about. But it's the premise of the book is it's something called the love method. And this was something that I received from God, this 4 steps to be able to do this. And and the first step is to let go and let God. And it's such a common phrase. We hear people talk about, I'm sure you've heard it millions of times. Well, maybe not millions of times, but I'm sure you've heard it numerous times in your life about letting go and letting God. And it's definitely not easy, but it's so worthwhile. It really is, because when we can do that, we're letting someone we're letting how do I want to say this? We're putting our faith in someone else, in a higher power, and knowing that actually I'm going to read before I get to this. I have notes here, and I should be just referring to my notes. So there's a scripture reading from the Bible. It's Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6, and it says, because this will tell you better than what I can do since I'm stumbling today. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take." Now, whether you believe in the Bible, whatever religion you are, if you don't like the word Lord, if you don't like the word God, if you want to just say, trust in yourself, trust in your higher power, yourself with all your heart. And when you can do things like meditate and pray and ask for guidance, you will get the answer you seek. And again, I mentioned earlier that sometimes things don't turn out the way we planned, but sometimes they turn out even better than we planned, or as good as what the original plan was. So going back to when I talked about at the beginning of this episode, and I mentioned this workshop that I was going to host, and I felt, well, number one, I felt so bad for the people who had signed up for it that I had to postpone it the first time, but everybody understood, it's a hurricane. And then when I had to postpone it again for my sister again, everybody was very understanding. And when it came time for me when it finally happened in January, because originally it was going to be in October. So a few months later, finally the day came, the weekend came for the workshop. And it was a challenge because, again, this was just, a few weeks after my sister had passed. And so I was emotional, but I was also so grateful. I was so grateful that, number 1, the hotel was okay with me postponing, and that worked out okay. Number 2, that people still were able to come in January, even though they had originally had it on their calendars for October. And I had speakers who were coming to speak too. It wasn't even just myself. I had other people coming in, and they were able to still share their expertise at this event. And it turned out really well, and not even necessarily financially, but it was such a blessing for me that it showed that even though I'd gone through this tragedy of losing my sister, that I could still show up and deliver the content that I intended to deliver. I received lots of wonderful testimonials from this event. They received value from it. And so it all turned out. Now, if I had decided, let's say, the first postponement was weather. Okay. But maybe once my sister, I postponed it for her. If I had just said, you know what, forget it. I'm just canceling this workshop altogether. I'm not going to do it. I think that it would have definitely, well, it would have hurt the people who had signed up because they wouldn't have gotten the information that I had to share. And it would have hurt myself as well because I didn't follow through on what I wanted to do. So again, it's like I said, it's when you have plans and things don't turn out, it can be hard to trust that everything is going to turn out right. But as long as you hold, another thing you could do is you can do visualization, and you can do affirmations, and really hold to the vision that whatever is going to happen, it's going to be what you envision or something better. And I'll share another time where trusting the journey did help me, as well as when last year I decided that I was going to do a retreat. And I planned this, and it came together in just a few months. And let's see, probably about a week or so before I was actually going to have the retreat, I wasn't sure how many people were actually going to come. I didn't have that many signed up, but at the last minute, I think I had 2 more people sign up that weren't originally planned to go. And so again, this was an opportunity where I could have just said, oh, I've only got 1 person registered. I better just forget it and cancel it. But I decided not to. And I said, nope, I'm going to trust that the right people are going to be there. The right people are going to show up. And they did. And it was a wonderful retreat. It was very small, but it was amazing. So I guess that's my lesson. I was going to share one other story with you, but another successful person who practices this, but I think you've gotten the gist of it already. What I want to really leave you with is the notion that even if you are someone who finds it hard to trust, when you can start leaning on your higher power, and through already some of the things I mentioned, especially I would say meditation is really my go-to. And this can be, there's lots of different ways to meditate. I've talked about it on the program before. You can certainly sit down and meditate, for half an hour in the silence. You can stare into a candle flame and meditate for a few minutes. You can walk outside in nature, go somewhere quiet, walk in a park, or go to the beach, somewhere like that. And that can be your way to meditate. Wherever you can go to be still and know. I love that phrase, and it is from scripture, but be still and know. When you get still, it gives yourself an opportunity to be able to hear the word of God. That's what I'm going to say, but to hear that's how this book came about. I was meditating and an idea came through that said, you need to write a book about love. And I was like, what? That's crazy. I do online marketing. What do I know about love? And yet I trusted. I trusted that there was a reason why this crazy idea would come into my head. And as I sat down at my computer that morning to say, okay, what would I say about love? Well, love was an acronym. It was let go and let God, open your heart to receive, value your uniqueness, embrace your divinity, all interesting stuff. And yet again, I'm like, okay, what am I going to say about that? I don't know. But later that day, in my email was an email from Hay House offering a writer's boot camp to teach you how to write a book. And because I know that Hay House is a wonderful publisher of books by people like Wayne Dyer, Christiane Northrup, Louise Hay, of course, who founded the company, that if anybody could teach me how to write a book about love, they could. And so I signed up for that boot camp that day. And that's what I mean by trust. Trusting also is that when you do trust, you will start finding synchronicities in your life, that things like that will happen that validate that you're on the right path. And I think I've talked about this in a previous episode, probably a few months ago, about how, and I'm sure many of you have probably heard this saying before, is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So being ready is trusting. It's having that trust that things are going to work out. And that when you do that, people or courses like this writer's boot camp will show up for you. And then when you follow through with that, again, your life will change in ways that you never thought possible. I mean, frankly, that's why I'm doing this podcast. I decided to do this podcast again because I'd done one several years ago, but then stopped. I decided to do this because I wanted to talk about the book. And that's where this came from. So, and it's allowed me to meet so many amazing people. So, okay, I think you got it already, right? Trust the journey. Let go. Let God's plan unfold. Let go of the fear. Let go of your uh, guilt that you may have if you get something wrong. Just let it go. Just know that things are going to go wrong. But as long as you keep going, as long as you keep moving forward and you don't give up, then miracles can happen. I'm just going to say it like that. Miracles can happen. It's a wonderful thing. So there you go. That's my story for today. That's my long and winding road to borrow a phrase from the Beatles, about letting go and letting God's plan unfold today. So one other thing I want to share with you right now is another tool that I have found that has helped me also in being able to trust the journey and to let God's plan unfold for me, is something that I do share on these solo episodes. And if you're a new listener to Live, Love, Engage, or if you're a new viewer watching it on YouTube, I channel something called light language, which is it's a message of love that comes through me from higher realms. And it's a language, it's akin to speaking in tongues because it's a foreign language to me. It's nothing that I can translate word for word. And sometimes it comes through not only spoken word, but it also comes through as a song. But it is a very healing modality. It's a type of energy healing, sound healing, and I love to share it on this podcast with you because, again, I feel that it has helped me strengthen my connection to my higher power, and I hope that if you are a regular subscriber and you've been listening to it, that I hope it's helping you as well. And I encourage you to, number one, you can go back and listen to these episodes and particularly skip to the end if you want and listen to the light language part. And I would also encourage you to reach out to me as well, because if you ever would like a private session with me, because then what we can do is I can ask for guidance from my higher power to really support you on, let's say, releasing whatever blocks that you might be holding, whatever fear that might be keeping you from being able to trust the journey as much as you would like to do. So if you are called to do that with me, I encourage you to reach out to me. You can schedule an appointment, go to engagewithgloria.com, and let's see if we can get together. And I would love to be able to share light language with you one-on-one. But in the meantime, for today, what I'm going to do is set the intention that the message that comes through today will be whatever you need to hear. And that's the beauty of it also, is that even though multiple people, I'm trusting, will be listening to this, is that you will receive the exact message that you need today, and that it will help you in whatever you need help with. That's a wonderful thing about it. So, all right. If you're listening to this while you're driving a car, I would encourage you to pause the podcast now and come back to it a little later when you can be somewhere where you can just sit down and be able to even close your eyes and just let the message come through and let it touch your heart, let it touch your soul, and to just really connect with an open mind and an open heart and be open to receive whatever comes through for you today. So I encourage you to now just get grounded. Hopefully you have your feet on the floor. Take a deep breath. Let it out. And be open to receive. Conne onne, conne kohoyanne, ani no nato naki, oko conne wanne a, e conne kayo tohia. Ako kane huane, asoko akui, koya no kue, soko koe, 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 koe no e, hasiyotu koe, kona koya no koa tochi, koia so koe, kayo no kou, kayo so kosho no kia, kanako kwani ato koshi nanakiata, koni oto kuma nakaria sikashako tokuyata, ono koe ato tumba nakiata, konyo no kupan nakaria takashaka tokuya patakae, hanaku tohu kohue, kayoto kayoto ikaiha, keyoto kohue, kohue kohue sonohu, kayoto kasiyo, kayoto itase, kokoya, kohue kohui kohu, koshodo koshan, kosho koya no kuse, kohuito. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of Live, Love, Engage. I hope that, again, that message resonated with you in some way, and yeah, and that it serves you for your highest good, because that is also what I ask, is that whatever message you receive is for your soul's highest good. So thank you so much for being with me today for this episode. I am so glad that you were watching or were listening, and I send you much love and hope that you subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and whether it is on YouTube or to your favorite podcast channel that you listen to. And until next time, when we meet again, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.